Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to FMA Discussion. This is episode 304, and today, kind of a matinee, so to speak. Usually we run at night, but every once in a while we go during the day. And today we are featuring guest Maestro Frank Delo, and he'll be coming on. He'll be speaking about his kind of his family system, from his father, passed on to him, what he's done with it, and his school, what he teaches. We're going to talk about that play aspect of learning and teaching, and then we're going to go into his book, which is right here. And then we're going to go into kind of the correlation between his music endeavors and career and how that's helped and kind of correlated with then the compare they've seen as far as FMA training. So without further ado, we're going to be bringing him up. If you're watching, tell us where you're watching from and smash that like button. Good afternoon. Hey, how are you?
Hey, good.
Good. Nice.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, happy to do. I'm glad we finally made it happen. I know we were talking about days and all that, and with no nothing to do with you, with more or less my schedule and just trying to get you in and stuff. But hey, but we made it happen. So just in a test run yesterday, I thought there were some really interesting things and all that. So, and particularly on the play aspect, I think as adults, I think we could incorporate more into that as far as a training where we like just notch everything down and just don't make it as serious as it needs to be, or But before we get into that, so you at an early age were exposed to this by your father, correct?
Yes, yes. I guess my early impulse, maybe like a lot of other little boys, you start to the kind of combat play early. And then things like cartoons, media. It's the influence starts early, but my experience with dad, he played off of that. It's like, hey, I see my kid getting interested in Ninja Turtles and He-Man, all these people swinging around swords and weapons and stuff. Like, okay, let's go with this. And I remember growing up, it was plenty of fun, and I just assumed it was dad playing, also playing Ninja Turtles or He-Man with me or whatever. But he used that as time to establish a lot of the basic mechanics of what I discovered later was our family martial arts system. We told me experiences learning from his father and material that some he had a big family back in the Philippines, farm family, so a lot of his brothers got similar instruction. Some went off to military, a lot of them went into law enforcement with that training. But yeah, for me, it started off fairly innocent, I think. And it wasn't until adulthood and I started pursuing martial arts more on my own, a little more seriously, that I encountered other Filipino martial arts teachers, and I discovered through training with them that that's really what dad was showing me through our play.
Yeah.
And then as I was old enough to understand, he like kind of came clean about what he was doing and how he was teaching me.
he confessed up, right?
Right. And he, even now, I mentioned yesterday, even now it's still kind of a novelty to him how popular Filipino martial arts are nowadays, worldwide, because to him, this is just the games they played on the farm.
How interesting! Wow.
I mean, it did have its serious moments. I mentioned in the book. Dad's told me about challenge matches that his dad went through, like people passing through the village and challenging the local master or whoever. And I guess that happened to be Grandpa. And he didn't go into a lot of graphic detail, but he told me about a lot of the wins. So, and I'm sure there's folklore like that with most of the other systems. Like you celebrate the victories of our past masters and try to
Yeah.
learn from anyone's mistakes if they survive
Yeah,
those mistakes.
right. They were able to speak on it. Wow, wow. So now, when did your father migrate over?
They both my parents came over in the 70s. I think that was sometime during the like all the Marcos regime stuff.
Mhm.
Um, that we haven't talked much about that, that side of things, but that's one way or another. That's what brought them here to the U.S.
Yeah, like in many
Um,
others too, from what I hear.
yeah.
Um,
So, and they made their life here. Dad was law enforcement in the Philippines for a number of years, and then he came over here, and he ended up law enforcement here until he retired.
oh,
Even
well,
now, he's in his he's 86 this year, and he's still working a security desk.
oh
It's
my
that
God.
generation that just you get used to working and you just work and work.
God
So
bless.
it's a drive that I'm trying to emulate, but he's got me beat so far.
Yeah, it's just that generate. Yeah, I think yeah, there's something about that older generation.
Yeah.
No, 100. So when he, going back to the Philippines, as far as the family system, was it a formal system? I mean, or was it just like, I mean, so first question, was it a formal system? Second, what comprised of the system, if it was a
Yeah.
system?
Well, I don't know, like the degree of formality. I
Mm,
mean, I know like we were taught material that seems consistent. It
mm,
wasn't like it's not like karate where dad started as a white belt and like earned ranks or anything.
yeah.
Um, and we don't really do the name game. Uh, like the way I teach it now, it's I've kind of continued that tradition. It's just you train with me and I pass along what I know. Okay, but as far as like, I don't know, certifications or rankings or anything like that, like the earmarks that people might look for, like we don't really do anything like that.
Mm.
So I mean, I don't know the degree of formality, but that's been my experience.
Yeah, no, it
Um,
seems like, I guess what I'm alluding to is it seems like the formality just wasn't there, which I'm not saying it's a bad thing. You know what I
yeah,
mean? I don't think it's a bad thing at all. So it's kind of consistent what you're saying as far as the older generation over there. So so what weapon was I mean, was there an area of focus as far as like weapons or
yeah.
methodology?
Most of the time it was kind of the standard length stick that we tend to use today, like what was it, 24 to 30 inch type,
Hmm.
you know around your arm's length stick. That's what we started with, and we're mostly a single stick or a single weapon focused system. um, but all the movements and principles are general enough where you can transition that to single weapon, double weapon, blunt, edged, whatever. Like that's the I guess the part that I promote most is like you have this general kind of understandable set of information that if you really understand the principles, you can transfer it to any weapon. And I put a lot of impetus on my students to exercise, you know, free thought and judgment, like their own judgment about what it is they're, like in the book I mentioned this, like you learn the movements with the stick, and then anything else you pick up, you try to understand the nature of the weapon.
Okay.
you know so what do we have with a knife? We have an edge, a tip, whatever's coming out the back end. It's like you're learning to look at everything a little more comprehensively. But it's mostly through that single stick. Like that's where I start everyone. That's how I started off.
Mm.
The childhood sword fighting was all just single stick. If I was lucky, Dad would give me one that he put together in the garage with a little cross hilt to make me feel like I was swinging around one of the cartoon swords. But it's the same general movements and ideas.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I think that. Does that cover it? It's
Yeah, yeah, no,
most.
no, no. Yeah, I was just curious, like if there was a weapon of focus and what have
Mhm.
you. So far as I guess the history or the evolution of it. So it sounds like grandfather passed on to your father. Is that?
Yes, that's as far back as I think either of us could trace things. Um, we have a number, I'm sure like every other Filipino, we got uh, an army of cousins and relatives running around the Philippines. And
Yeah.
dad has alluded to, various uncles and cousins that had, maybe they were from a different region or had some different background, and they would share. It was never, from what I understand, it was never shared as like a system. It's just, here's what I know. It's just
Yeah.
like, imagine. I mean, it's like the story I've heard from a lot of the more popular systems nowadays. Like the progenitor of that system somehow went on this journey and collected all the information they could and kind of unified it into systems.
Mm.
So that's a bit of the history that I could trace back from dad, except like through all the various turmoil, historical turmoil, like he wasn't able to spend a lot of time with some of these other relatives, or they something got to them before he could do extensive training. So most of it came from grandpa.
Interesting.
Um,
Oh, wow, wow.
and then his generation, like he was born so 1936, so
Mm.
he got to live through a lot of the like World War II
Oh, the
experience
World War
through the
II.
Philippines. I remember my grandpa on my mom's side, like they would talk about this too, like their encounters with the Japanese, and
Mm.
like so that was an interesting time to be like a bearer of martial knowledge, because your chances are you get some opportunity to have to exercise that knowledge.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Not jeez. What? Just so for the folks who are watching, um, or will be watching later when it's downloaded on YouTube. What geographically speaking, what is the area your family's from?
yeah, it's Central Luzon. Actually, if you have the book in front of you, I have a Wikipedia map like in the beginning pages. It's the province is highlighted out.
Yes, I got it
Uh,
right here. So, folks, if you can
so
see the dark, that's geographically in the Upper Luzon area. That's the area where they're from.
yeah,
Interesting.
I've encountered this a lot every time I've run into, not even in a martial arts context, just other Filipinos. Inevitably, they ask you where your family's from. So I figured I should put that in the head of the
I
book.
think it's a good
Like,
idea. And the reason why I'd like to ask, and I never used to do this in the beginning when I started doing interviews, like anything else. I mean, you get better at your craft as you're going along. But it just, I started to learn that geographically speaking, obviously more styles were stressed, weapons were stressed, pending there, and all that. So I make a point to know, you know what I mean, and also just to kind of further my own education as well. Um, so being the Upper Luzon area, I guess known for the stick, so that I mean that makes sense. So it sounds like not a system as you mentioned, but kind of like some techniques that were just gathered or handed down, and then maybe through experience and training and what have you, maybe more was added. Is that safe?
yeah, I mean the base, the main base material, it's a Cinco Terro system, and I've seen that in different, like the more popular systems in
Mm,
some version. Um, but of course, a lot of the other systems have much more extensive body of curriculum. The as far as like material off of that from other sources, like the way any of my other family has described it is just kind of like they would describe maybe single techniques or like smaller principles,
mm,
but that would fit into the larger body of like the main body of movement and principle. Imagine like somebody just teaching a single disarm or like a single maneuver to get to like a lethal target. Like it was always framed kind of like that.
Yeah, okay.
Uh, it was never other than like the main body movements. It was never like, look at this whole segment of curriculum. It tended to be like single tricks, and the way Dad explained it to me too, like one of my uncles who's now passed. He had a lot of experience, like military law enforcement experience, and he was known for knife while he was around, but he just never shared any of it with
Mhm.
anyone. And the way Dad explained it was like he was afraid somebody would turn his own tricks against him.
I've heard
Like,
that's not the first time that's been, that's come across. Okay.
yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of that across cultures, and
Yeah.
especially in martial arts. Like, you have some, what you perceive as like a super weapon or some
Mm,
secret advantage. Um, I mean, nowadays, we live in this information age, and
yeah.
I feel like, especially for the sake of legacy, like being open about these things, and allowing people to really carry on the torch instead of shrouding, like the shrouding things in mystery. It just, um, I don't know. It's going to be a cause for arts to die out. You know.
That is such a great point that you brought up. It's like, because I remember when I first got into this in the '90s, like the secrecy was like kind of cool. It's like, yeah, yeah, it's secret, and we're not gonna just get this all out and bastardize it and prostitute it, and all that. But much to your point, well, then doesn't it have the possibility of dying out and fading out? Like I always wondered, like how many systems, which is kind of sad, but how many systems over there that were maybe what your grandfather and your father had that nobody knows of? They just died. Nobody knows about them. They're gone. You know what I mean? Like there has to be, like I'm guessing probably a pretty significant post World War II. It started happening maybe. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen this a lot in. Yeah, I mentioned yesterday. I train Chinese internal martial arts as
Mm-hmm.
well. There's so much of that in Chinese martial arts where they didn't, for generations they didn't want to train anyone who wasn't ethnically Chinese. And now talking to my friends and colleagues in that, like, there's whole systems like they can see it on the precipice of dying out because
Because they
you know
they chose to make that conscious choice not to spread it, and here they're gonna die. It's like, like it parallels what you're just the point you made far as Chinese martial arts reference to it's like Silat. Like there's systems that have
Mhm.
died out, and it's like, and here's the thing, like you said, with the information train now via internet and everything being somewhat global, us being so much closer in that regard, like, is there really secrets anymore? You know what I mean?
Right.
You know?
The other side of that, because I've had this talk with a lot of my friends as well. Like, the other side of that is because there's such a flood of information that kind of brings other problems in too. Like,
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. Yeah.
yeah, like the big one I've seen across martial arts is, kind of the the shallow background, like people claiming mastery that don't really have
No,
the
yeah,
credentials.
that's the double-edged
Because
sword. Yeah.
I mean, but we can't avoid we can't avoid the main issue because of potential pitfalls. Like, we have to share, and we have to keep this heritage going. Whatever martial heritage you might have, and there's going to be people who try to take advantage, and there's going to be people who just refuse to be open and just do what you can with the information we have. Like, that's a big part of my personal mission. Is I want to, as much as I know, I want to share and make it as broadly uh, consumable or approachable as I can. Like, there's already enough hassle, like trying to translate ideas and concepts from one language to another. You know,
Yeah.
if I understand something, I want to try to communicate it for the, you know, in my case, I just have kind of, you know, the average American office person or local family, and like they're mostly not interested in becoming, you know, some kind of cool killer commando or anything.
Yeah, or with the
It's
fatigues and the yeah.
right, like, and you know, for not to take away from people who want or need that experience,
Yeah.
but to me, you get the broadest audience by making things the most accessible, like through language and
Mhm.
through, you know, through concept. And that, for me, that approach should help serve the rest of the community who might be more specialized. You know,
Good point as
I
far as the accessibility. You know what I mean?
yeah.
You
I mean,
know?
how many times have you trained with a teacher who they're so knowledgeable about their subject that anything they say just immediately goes over your head because it's so dense with meaning. Like, I've been in the academic world like that. I've been all different martial arts. Like, if you really want people to continue, like, let's instead of having people jump in the deep end with seminars all the time, maybe have them wade into the wading pool just a little bit so they don't drown.
No,
You
no,
know,
no. Right. I mean, like again, you know, basics. You know, I mean, not over, doing it with a bunch of advanced stuff, and
right?
and just for the sake of, that's making it more appealing to the audience as far as the aesthetic value. Um, but yeah, no, it's such good points though, especially like these systems that I feel are going to die out just because they weren't spread, or they just died with the family, or the aspect of
Mm,
secrecy and they didn't want anybody knowing it, or which is kind of sad because there could be some gems out there that maybe we just never got to witness or see, due to that.
right.
And so, but it sounds like your grandfather and father just really, their methodology, so to speak, was they advocate simplicity. I mean, not just by
Yes.
virtue of Cinco Terro, but just in general, like, without getting, because I bet you a lot of these systems start like that. Your basic, I don't want to, say bridge systems, but I think they're bridge now, but I think back
Yeah.
then, I think they were actually smaller scale, and now they're just,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, that's I you use the term bridge, like that's certainly part of how I teach is, you know, like, you know, I introduce my family system as, you know, a gateway system to any other Filipino martial arts system you
mm,
might be interested in. You know, at the same time, because it's relatively small curriculum wise, I encourage a lot of critical thought and depth. You
mm,
know, like, you know, or you mentioned like angle one with any system, it's just that
yeah,
initial swing. What, how far can that go? You know, what can it do? What are the million iterations of an angle one strike? You know,
mm,
um, or things like footwork. My actually, this made me think a lot because the way Dad communicated his experience, like, he often got frustrated trying to teach Americans when he first got here because he said they none of them could move their hands and feet at the same time. It's like teaching dancing. Like, you get fixated on the weapon, and then their feet
their
freeze in
features
place.
go, yeah,
So it gave me, and I noticed it too when I first started teaching Filipino martial arts. Like, wow, people's body awareness and comfort, like moving their entire body, is actually kind of staggered. So
hmm,
I I I tried to cut things back. Like, okay, well, there's some people teach triangles, some people, you know, just will do, you know, like taekwondo or boxing shuffles or whatever. What's the baseline idea that will get the most people? And for me, it was just hands move, feet move, just
yeah,
very simple, very, you know, like kind of caveman. But even even the least martially experienced students I've worked with, they start to understand it right away. Like, I don't specify like where your feet need to go right away or how they're supposed to step. Just move your feet.
let's just start with you just moving your feet, and then we'll just
Right.
go.
Yeah, I think as skilled practitioners, a lot of us think at a higher level, and we assume things that are simple for
That is
us.
such a great point because you know why? I've been guilty of that. Like, oh yeah, they'll have this. I mean, they're just, and you're like, maybe not.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
forget what a beginner really feels like.
yeah,
So, I mean, this is part of the point I try to make in the book is like pe- people like to see the advanced flashy stuff, but you're never going to understand it if we don't understand it from a like almost primordial fundamental level.
yeah,
Like if somebody's trying to hit me, do I want to be there? Probably not. So what's going to move me away from the threat? It's my feet. Just
yeah.
let them start moving and we'll sort out the details later. You know.
Oh, no, I
Um
like that. Yeah, yeah. It's almost, it's almost. I'm not saying there's an absolute direct correlation here to what you're doing and what your father noticed, but it's almost like Remy Presses when he was going into the traditional schools. He had to have seen that the footwork, very linear and all that. So there's nobody telling me he didn't tailor his what was over there, and what he brought to the states, got tailored. You know what I mean?
mm,
And I think that's probably a good reason for that. I'm guessing was the troubles or what he was experiencing, far as the feet and
yeah.
whatever else, or part of
Yeah.
it at least.
I mean I feel like that's the mark of a good teacher is like you don't just bare bones or like you don't just um transmit material like verbatim like you there's that element of thought adjusting for the student because we're not all robots it's
Mm.
not like you plug in plug in the program
Yeah.
and then it just comes out like
Put it in the thumb drive.
right.
We'll come
Oh
back in
man,
10 minutes. He'll be good to go.
I I got jealous first time I watched The Matrix. Like, man, I wish learning new martial arts skills were that easy. Just plug my
Don't we
brain in.
all, huh? Don't we all? Gosh. We got yeah, Robert Small is here. He was a Mountain guy, huh? I wonder if Robert experienced the same thing. Well, we'll find out. But so all right, so we know your father had five strikes. While we're on it, what did he, what did he advocate, or what did the grandfather give your father, and your father in turn give to you as far as footwork?
Um, well, when I first started learning, I mean, other than the kind of like younger child play where it's just whatever goes, the initial like kind of formalized training, it was we started with a single step, single strike. Just with like for instance hitting with the right hand, the right foot would step forward and back
Hmm.
along with forehand strike, forward step, backhand strike, backward step. It's just the initial idea of moving a hand with a foot,
Okay.
you know, and then from there it's kind of like if you continue stepping forward, I step back with the opposite foot, like kind of very simple drills, but with the idea of the hand moves, the foot moves. Um, we to put it at like a higher nerd level, like we're concerned with range because
Hmm.
we tend to want to counter hit like immediately. Um, so instead of kind of directly back and out of um, like out of range and having to return, we have a lot of lateral movement. So the step forward and step back in training becomes a step laterally within range to hit the defang the snake, as it were, to hit the
Okay.
incoming hand. Um, Hand and head. It was very kind of simple, you know.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Two major, for stick targeting. So it sounds like you were more Largo Mono, is or
yeah, that sounds right. I mean, these
I
are
mean,
all terms
generally
that
speaking. I mean,
like I had to catch up with a lot of these popular use terms later
or just
because
long
I
memory.
just dad never talked about them in those terms. It was
Yeah,
always
yeah,
like,
yeah.
can you hit them? Can you not hit them? Like, are you getting hit? Um,
See,
and
there's something to that. It's like I think there's something to that. Like I think we are in the process sometimes too many terms, making it too complicated. It's like, okay, did you get hit? No, good.
right.
Okay,
I,
did you get
you know,
hit?
some of that is, there's still that mystique of like, it makes it feel cooler what you're learning because I'm using these Spanish or Tagalog
Oh,
terms
there's
for,
definitely a money thing to it. Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, marketing.
right.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
So
100%.
again, it's you know it has its benefits and hazards, but I for me I try to put things in as simple terms and usually in English because that's who I'm working with is just
This is
fellow
a whole. That's a
Americans here.
whole nother. That's a whole nother issue too. Yeah, yeah.
And I admit I've resorted to Google Translate every once in a while when people throw terms around. It's like, well, my family never demanded that I learn Tagalog growing up, so I'm a bit at a loss. I don't know if that some people might think I'm less Filipino, but
Oh my
I
gosh.
don't know. Like the ethnicity game is a little funny. Just
Yeah.
um, I I I'm concerned mostly with who comes to me to learn, so that's who I'm serving. That's
Yeah,
how I
yeah, right. Is
communicate
it
with
whether or
them.
not the degree of Filipino you are?
Right. Um,
um, all right. So the basic. So it sounds like okay. Basic footwork. Did he get as you got older? Did he get into the triangular footwork or?
yeah, it kind of becomes like the single steps kind of become triangles. Like
Okay.
he never really taught it like step on this triangle, but
Mhm.
if you look at where you're stepping, that's what it is. You
Okay.
know,
Okay.
you're in order to move your body laterally in a way to hit or counter hit somebody, you end up stepping in these patterns, like predictable patterns that bring you into that movement.
Okay.
But it was never taught to me as like formal, like let's move in these
Okay.
exact
Like they're actually
patterns.
putting sticks on the ground and
Right.
all the different triangle
Yeah.
shapes. I understand.
Now
Okay.
now I have because I've crossed hands with a lot of other FMA colleagues, all different systems. So
Mm.
I'm not against uh, using things that work to help people learn. So some
Sure.
people have this mindset like visually they need to see something or they need to take, like I have students who have to have a notebook with them, or they need a video of something so they can learn a certain way. Like that, this is where I bring my education
Yeah.
experience.
Different types of learners. Sure.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not so dedicated to it. Like the mode of learning is not part of my curriculum.
Mm.
It's understanding the student. Like I feel like some systems, like they'll follow this pattern of how to learn movement, and it may work for a lot of people, but you have to be prepared to diverge from that depending on who's coming to you and how they learn. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. 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 No. No. So what was I say here? So then, all right. So let's just go into the play aspect. It's
Yeah.
funny. I think there's a benefit to the play aspect, even with adults, to kind of just tone things down, take the air out of the room, take maybe some of the anxiety with new incoming students, and just doing that. What say you on that?
Well, I mean, look at the example of nature. Like, what do puppies and kittens do? Like they're doing these natural movements that in adulthood that might mean them like killing prey or what it
Mm,
could be like a deadly use. Bear cubs, you see them play, or they'll play with the adults and kind of understand the boundaries of force. I forget who, like I know,
good point.
I've read a lot from other authors, and another author brought that point up. I can't remember exactly who, but it's like that's how other vertebrates learn learn their life survival skills, is by mimicking it through play when they're younger. And even adult I look at adult dogs. You go to a dog park, as long as the dogs are all well adjusted, they understand the boundaries of force.
Definitely. Yeah.
you know. So to me, it's like that's one of those gimmies from nature. Like, let's just copy that. I mean, if you wanna go to an extreme, like like we teach unarmed martial arts too. The kung fu material,
Mm.
that kind of stuff. Like, not every class has to be like a full contact knockout
Yeah.
experience.
Well, if you want students, I mean,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I
yeah.
have at least a third of my students are in their 50s and older. Like,
Mm.
they don't want to go to work the next day with a black eye or broken hand
Or just
or
be able to go to work the next day.
right move at all. Um, but yeah, to me that example of play, it's natural. Like it's an example we get from nature. And I think, like, it's if you look at the mechanics and kind of like the neurology of it, like it's building these pathways we need for I think with weapon arts we tend to, or a lot of people tend to focus on the more harmful or deadly side. Like, we were talking before about the killer commando type
Yeah,
training.
yeah.
Like, if for me, like, the stress of that is already working against you. Like, so part of my background, I mentioned before, I have a patchwork of stuff. That's what I get for for pursuing education in the arts. But I've worked a diverse patchwork to keep the bills paid. One of those experiences was private security,
Mm,
and it puts you in anything with violence profession,
yeah,
security, law enforcement, military. It puts your mind in a different place, even at a low level. If you're constantly in a mode of expecting threat, it's just
yeah,
not good for your brain long term.
yeah. And
Um,
it's just constant like stress. I mean,
right. I,
just
I
overloaded.
noticed that after my first kind of extended contract that I came back from, and I tried to go on the mat and teach, and everything was just like a little. I noticed it immediately. Like, everything was operating a little more harshly. Like I'm expecting
Mm.
something to leap out from the shadows, and
Oh,
you know.
jeez.
So I try to I try not to keep people in that place um, for every class period. Like, we do have appropriate, I think appropriate stress training.
Yeah,
You and I try to frame things in play as much as possible. But there's times like the other day we did a stress drawing class. Like, whatever you carry for self defense, let's
yeah.
practice drawing it on a cue.
Under
Like,
pressure, not done enough.
right.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, because people, what's our most common mode of training? We have the weapon in our hand already, and we're swinging it around, right?
Exactly.
Like, what about? And this is something I'll credit, Mike Janich with, one of my colleagues, Keith Jennings. He's
Yeah.
he's in the
Like
city.
yeah.
He I got to train with Mike because Keith brought him into his school. But that idea of, like, transitioning from empty hand to drawing something like that
Mm.
started to reinforce the importance of that idea. Because unless you're walking around with a cane or just like knives in hand ready to go, like,
No, I think it's so imperative, like not only knowing what it is, but have you practiced drawing under pressure? I mean,
right.
no, I think that's such a valuable skill set, and I think it gets often neglected, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, that's the more serious side of things. I mean,
mm,
tracking back to play, it's just I try to like it's we have our share of sparring, but it's not always like, go, let's go 100%. Like, I'll make different restrictions on play. Like, okay, uh, person A is only allowed to defend. They could
yeah,
have,
yeah. I like that though, that role playing. I think there's a benefit to that. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Okay, you can only hit to the hand, you can only hit to the leg.
right.
I think
It makes you have to be fluid mentally a certain way,
hmm,
um, and that's what I want. Like, from any of my martial arts students, let alone the ones studying FMA with me, like, I want I want fluid, adaptable thought, because that the tools that they learn from me physically, they can bring them to bear better.
yeah,
And
how do we do that though? How do we get folks to embrace more of the play aspect that you alluded to and also going back to your analogy of young animals doing that, I just think there's a value to that. I think we take things just too seriously, and
Yeah.
I'm not
I
saying
mean,
everybody, but
I mean, people have to step back and just kind of think of the environment they're actually in day to day. Like
mm,
unless you're unless you're a cop, for instance, you're a beat cop, you're out there every day sticking your neck out, or you're actively on the battlefield or whatever. Like most of us who are living like the average American life, day job and whatever, like we can we can step back a little bit from what is it, zone orange or whatever, the color codes of threat.
yeah, as far as like trouble or there or like
Yeah,
danger.
yeah. I mean, and if you look at any other interest you get into, like um it's the fun of it that helps you get deeper into it. Like if I'm training something because like I'm always thinking about death waiting for me around the corner, like there's a certain stress involved.
Man, I don't think. Yeah, I don't know how long. I don't know how long that's keeping you there, right?
Yeah, I mean, in contrast, look at the craft beer scene.
Yeah,
People like, I when I grew up, everything was like Budweiser and
yeah.
like just kind of the simple big box brands. Now you have uh the average house dad or whatever, like talking about the local craft IPA and like the level of hops and things,
Not
because
this
it's
bad. I'm just kidding.
yeah, that's IPAs aren't for me, but the idea that they get into this hobby and they're having fun with it. I mean, part of it is you're drinking, but
Mm.
that you get deeper and deeper into this hobby because you're having so much fun with it, and you talk to these other people, and like some of my beer friends, like I they start talking about different craft stuff and I have no idea what's happening anymore. Like
Mm.
they know so much about the process, but or like getting into gaming, like my 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 friend and colleague Keith, who brought Mike Janich in. He's a big Dungeons and Dragons guy. Like there's this whole aspect of learning the gameplay and understanding, like it kind of tickles the same imagination as a good martial arts, I think. But you get it, you crack the lid on some of these hobbies, and because you're having so much fun, you keep
You
spiraling
start
in. And
dialing really into it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So the one of the big questions I have to ask when I'm teaching is like, is everyone having fun? Because
Mm.
if you walk in and like, I got to prepare for the battlefield, like it's just that's not the environment most of us are in, and B, the mindset it puts you, unless you really need it, like we kind of have to step back a bit. I don't
I don't
know.
think it's healthy because then when you leave that environment, you're gonna be like, I think it's just gonna change your psyche. Like you're just gonna
Yeah,
be like, did he look at
yeah,
me? Like, it,
right, right. Just
you know
make
what I
make
mean? You're gonna
people
start making up stuff that
right.
wasn't
Yeah,
even
just
like an issue or a problem. It's but
what when we teach self defense, like general self defense, that's one of the big things that we try to stress. Like I'm telling you information and some movements, but please don't walk out the doors being paranoid.
yeah,
Like,
like I know, like just inoculation can have like an adverse effect. It like, make them hypersensitive to a place they frequent like 5 times a week or something.
right.
It's
Um, and
yeah.
now as far as helping people incorporate play into their schools or teaching groups, one of the things that helped us, kind of to me, a little unexpectedly, is having a class mixed with kids and adults together. Um,
Okay.
because I found, like if it's just the adults, I find that they tend to go they tend to ramp up quickly. You're like, okay, touch the
Mm.
game. We're playing the game, and then suddenly they're trying to knife each other to death. And I have to step in and scale back. Like let's go back to the play part. With younger students, I think we tap it's that natural play idea. Like
Yeah, they
I
don't get upset. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
right.
there's
I
no,
mean,
you
how
know.
how many times have I gotten a stick on the knuckle from some 10-year-old kid who's just starting to learn? Like
Yeah.
it's fine. Like it's expected.
Mm.
And I think naturally adults tend to tone down whatever they're doing in order to accommodate the kids that they're around. And
Yeah.
ultimately you're both learning the same body of material. It's just, you know, like you're not going to clock a 10-year-old kid like
Right.
in the head with a stick and knock him out. Like, um, but I found that was a quick way for us to get our adult students who may normally they may start to ramp up quickly, like
Mm.
give them a little kind of softer hand as far as training,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
I like it.
and they're more inclined to think of it in play, like, okay, you know, oh, you got me, you know, like let's move, you know,
Mm.
it's a little self-regulating in our experience.
Yeah, and then hopefully the adults can improve with themselves, you know. But we got some
Yeah,
folks. We got Paulo Rubio, Dean Bronco. Oh my gosh, that guy kills me. And we got Guru Terry from Stockton. Yeah, he's making a lot of good points, Paulo, for sure, for sure. Um, yeah, I totally agree though that just that whole aspect of play, and I think your analogy, as far as the young animals and what they're doing, I think that's right on target. You know, um, so when did you, I guess, when did you officially kind of open up your own school, or when did that occur?
yeah. Was it 2015? We opened the doors. My business partner Jason and I, we incorporated in 2013 as a knife company. You know, we wanted to retail knives, and I think that was some of my FMA already starting to act out. Like we wanted to,
My
we
internal
wanted to,
MMA is coming out.
right, but you know, we wanted to be around blades.
Yeah.
So we started like, okay, let's try like small scale retail, um, and then eventually it became us designing and producing our own designs.
Mm.
I actually have, I forget what issue, but I'm in one of the knife magazines, like it was a 2019 edition. I could probably post it later, but
Oh yeah,
uh,
do so. I think folks might like seeing that. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, here I have one in reach actually.
Paulo,
Let
I
me
like
see.
his approach too, Paulo. It's yeah, adults do. He's just Paulo's making a comment. Whoa, look at that loose
This
side.
is one of my designs we had produced
Oh
a
wow.
number of years ago, but t- it was fun because I like to I like my tools to do what feels comfortable for me.
Hmm.
So like for this, it's like a 7-inch dagger, but balances right, like right by the hilt,
Oh, okay.
because I like to keep everything close to the hand and be able to change direction quickly. There's some designs that are a little more forward heavy, and you know the
Then you can pull the
forward
tip
weight.
in more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the blade helps you do some of the work of carving, but
Mm.
I don't. That's another aspect of this whole martial arts teaching experience. It's informed a lot more of my like knife stuff, you know, like or weapon stuff. Like what does it do? How is it supposed to be? You know, like certain knives that were designed or certain blades that are designed to move a certain way. Like where how how does it want to move, and how can I change my mechanics to match what it's designed for? You
Okay.
know, um, and that's a whole other can of worms. Um, but what were we talking about? Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
the
As far
school.
as opening up your school, so
Yeah.
what do you? So just for the folks who are watching, I mean, what are you offering? I know you obviously teach kids. You mentioned that to adults. So what programs do you offer there?
All right. So we have this goes into our backstory a little bit, but which I'll get back to. But the school, we have we have a main curriculum where all the other instructors and I have kind of combined into a mixed curriculum, and then we offer separate classes, like you know through the week. There's a separate FMA class. There's separate like Jikundo. I have a Saturday morning Tai Chi class. It's become more of like a general internal arts class, but
Mhm.
um, so for mostly for the kids, we have the combined curriculum. We've organized it into uh, about 10 belts. It's a system that people are kind of comfortable seeing and like functioning in, and we try to prioritize like you know the actual usability of the material. You know, like I don't know some of the local schools. Yeah, it's like a lot of kind of McDojo stuff where and it's endless belts. You pay endless fees for testing. Like we don't
And,
do any of those lesser business practices.
oh, nice.
But like seeing a belt system, like it just there's something about it that helps kids in
Oh,
particular.
I
Like
totally agree for kids. Yeah, that incremental, tangible. Yeah, I don't know how you
yeah,
do without it. I mean, obviously you can do without it, but I just
right.
think it's so critical. That
Yeah,
happens.
I mean, we have some adults doing it too. The focus changes a little bit. Like the kids class is a little more play oriented. Um, the it's a little more about the building the athleticism and of course I don't want I don't want kids to square up and try to fight an adult attacker. Like we prioritize like making space and getting away.
Mm,
But the for the younger students, the focus is a lot more on kind of the athletic development. The adult students, um, we try to. There's certainly athletic development involved, but we try to put more of the practical usage of the material at the forefront.
okay.
Um, so that there's that, and then the separate classes like my FMA class, we like it's I'm trying to follow Dad's pattern. Like
Mm,
we didn't get ranks or anything. You just kind of keep learning and keep advancing. So what I started doing is giving people certificate of hours completed, like just something to keep track of at least the time.
okay.
But we don't have like uh guru or like
We
any of
don't
those.
have Grandmaster Supreme,
Right.
Tuhan.
I did I did order uh I did order a lordship title online. There's
See?
a fun like you can buy like a square foot of a national park in Scotland, and you're officially like a lord. So when
Oh,
people ask me for my titles, that's one of them I'll use. And then like a lot of people, I did the online ordination. So technically, I'm a reverend lord. Um,
Reverend Lord of Cinco Terre. See? Yeah.
right. It's just a little tongue in cheek, but if people are really, really want to see titles, I have some titles to hand them.
But
Um,
here's the thing, though. What about you? If you had someone that generally had a profound interest to teach your system or carry it out, would you give them something of certification that would enable them to do that? Or
um, I I've thought about this a lot. The What I try to do. This is why I've kind of come back to the hours completed certificates because I mean, inevitably we're going to end up teaching like whatever it is we know that we think is cool and somebody wants to learn it. We're gonna teach it. You know, I'm like as far as making it somehow like official. I don't know. To me that's going to depend highly on the individual and like how well they understand the movement, communicate it, apply it.
mhm.
Um, I haven't thought of holding on to much of like student teacher ownership over anyone who wants to teach what I know, because part of it is I know people are going to teach what they know anyways.
Okay.
If we can, it, I try to give the example that I would like people to hold with me is like if I've learned something from somebody else, I try to credit them with that
Yeah,
information.
for sure.
You know, I other than just assigning a rank or like teachership or mastership, like if people are willing to say like, hey, I got value from Frank and his family system, this is what I learned from it. I think that's the easiest way for people to like respectfully return the value that they've earned. You know,
Okay. No,
um,
no. I mean, that's an interesting outlook. And I mean, actually, the first time I heard something like that, to be quite honest, as far as your hours and you were feeling that people are going to teach anyhow. So, but
yeah, I mean, it's plagued. I think it's plagued FMA particularly because you get people go to a seminar, like a weekend seminar, and they'll just come back and to whatever group and just share it
Yeah,
anyways,
they're going to
whatever
share
they're
it because if they want to work the material, they're going to have some
right.
interaction with somebody, right? So,
Yeah. I mean, like I've done this myself. Like I've adopted drills that I got from like Serrata people, modern Arnis
mm,
people, like because I think they had a particular value that fits what we're teaching. It's like, okay, I got this from my buddy who does this system.
mm,
And and if you look at the same drill from this guy, it's almost the same, but they focus on this detail or whatever.
okay.
So to me, that's, I mean, also if we're trying to unify the community, I think a little more sharing in some way is going to help unify that. I've actually enjoyed
Cool.
a good culture around here with the other FMA teachers within like the Chicago area.
Mm.
Um, Jesse, who he
Jesse,
looks like he got his camera
yeah, we're
stuffs.
doing
Right.
we're going to do the raffle for him. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're watching and you heard that, consider participating. That's he's a good guy. We've talked at length. Uh, I like seeing the work he's doing as well. So that's one step in building the community is that kind of support. But there's a lot of us around here that we interact a lot. We play together when schedules work out. Um, we've been trying to plan events together. Like and be a bigger community.
Yeah.
You know,
You're going
so
to see more of that coming because more people are making a conscious effort to do that. Like, for instance, like Tim Martman, I think is one of the areas he excels in. And so we're already starting to do that. I think states are going to start doing it, like we did one in Connecticut just recently. We have another one
mm,
coming in August. I think it's going to grow. I really do because you're starting to see the community come more together. Now, I'm sure it's several reasons. People advocating it, people seeing it being done, COVID, the cross
yeah,
training online. So,
it's a good chance to eat together. That's one of I'm no stranger to food, and I think that's always part of my social interaction with other Filipinos. With
the food component.
yes, take home your doggy bag after every party.
Uh, oh, I love doggy bags to take home. So, the book. Okay, so folks that may have not seen this. Okay, so this is the book, and and again, I want to thank you for gifting me this. I
Sure.
promise you, when I will get one day, I'm going to actually get to go through the whole thing. I got a few in front and all that, but just so what was the so tell us, when you started, what was the inspiration and all that good stuff?
Well, yeah, technically I started it years ago because I part of it is just I didn't want to forget anything that Dad started teaching me, so I like keep outlines and general notes. And to be you know to be blunt about it, like he's getting older, and I know he's not going to be around forever.
Hmm.
So part of it was just recording a family legacy. You'll be able to show something with him in it to at least my extended family, and pay a nod to our previous generations. So
Yeah,
that was part of it. I think within the last year, I worked on it more earnestly, trying to actually flesh it out into a book. Um, I worked with uh, a lot of helpful professionals to help
yeah.
me through the process because this is my first book, hopefully of many. But um,
Oh, okay.
I'll mention. Oh, shoot, we worked together so much, and then his name falls out of my head immediately when I need it. Uh, Phil Elmore. He was my editor. Um,
Okay, I've heard of him. Okay.
yeah, he's had a long history in like the self defense industry,
Hmm.
um, and he happened to start like a writers help group right around when I was trying to make some progress on this.
That's
So
neat. Okay.
I reached out, and he was very helpful. Um, you know, um, it was cool because I used to see his books in like the old Paladin Press catalogs, and like, oh, this guy's got a cool like sword book. He's like all this kind of cool stuff that adolescent boys fantasize about, the violence that they like, oh, what if I were on the battlefield, or like what if I were a Ninja Turtle. And it's like, oh, so it was cool to work with him. He helped me a lot. He's still actively writing even now. I think he just recently started a podcast of his own. But yeah, and then I have a martial arts friend, Corey. Corey Freeman. He's one of my. We trained together in Bagwajang, our internal art, but he's also a very talented graphic artist. So he's the one who designed the cover and some of our logoing and things. So
did a good job. I mean,
yeah, I had good fortune to rely on some good friends who are also great professionals. And I'm working with some more friends now to get the book translated into other languages. I want to expand that mission, that outreach of accessibility to as broad an audience as I can, which includes a worldwide audience.
Tagalog, right? You got to get done in that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'll get one of my family will yell at me if I don't get it done in that. But
here, folks, here's a picture of Frank and his father. So so this is so folks, where can they for folks that are listening, where can they get it?
Oh, it's on Amazon now. You can get it paperback, hardcover, or Kindle. But it's also available wherever books are sold. So if you go into your local like Barnes and Noble and ask for it, they should be able to order it in. I'm slowly getting it out to libraries. I have one in my local library now. As I get to be featured as a local author, but I'm trying to get it out.
That's great.
As far as I can reach out, practically speaking. But if anyone's interested, you can get your own copy online. And if you want one available at your local library, you can reach out to me so I can send one to them and talk to the right people.
Yeah, here's another thing. So, no food is bad.
Yes.
So, folks, as Frank mentioned, many of us love to eat.
So part of it, like it's to introduce a family system, but also I have some observations at the end specifically for teaching, and then some general stuff that I've run into, like people asking me about nutrition or exercise.
Yeah.
So just a couple playful observations. Like I said, I'm no stranger to eating, but depending on your goals, like you may have to modify your approach.
Yeah, you might have to. Definitely. So let's go. You're a musician. Let's tap into this. Something that we talked about in the test run, as far as like you seeing the parallel between your being a musician as far as your FMA. So just for the folks, what say you on that?
Yeah. So this is a loaded topic. This is one of the reasons this is slated as a future book. I have it outlined now. I'm trying to chip away at it, but so Filipino martial arts, like music, is a physical skill, right? So part of getting good, one direction we can go with this, like part of getting good at either one is getting the right kind of repetitions to build the right body awareness, body responses, the right neurons firing together, and anything you do enough becomes habit. So establishing good habits early on is important. Otherwise, you spend more time going back and like overwriting the bad habits into a better habit. Um, so that's one avenue. There's like so, sorry, it's a lot. It's kind of like jumping into the deep end for me. Like where
Yeah, no, no, no.
which direction do I go? There's like lessons in rhythm, for instance, rhythm and timing. Um, but we can't do more complex. Like let's say jazz musician, for instance. There's a lot of improvisation in their style of music. You
Okay.
can't do any of that unless you've learned you know basically all of your scales and then how to follow a basic metronome click, right? None of that advanced stuff can happen without the right fundamental bass in place.
Okay.
But with that fundamental bass, you could go, and if you're really good at riffing, you could go do jazz stuff. But off of that same bass, like for me, I went off and classical, like an orchestral musician, because you
Mm,
you have that framework. I know all the scales. I can follow a beat, um, and that same basic skill set serves me well over there. Um, any genre of music. I mean, the screamy metal bands. Like what any of their music you turn on, you're going to find some kind of beat and some
yeah, there's
understanding
gonna be
of.
something there. It's almost parallel. Like you have your like, okay, you learn some basic footwork and strikes, and then you start doing carenza.
Right,
You know,
right. That's exactly it. But if you just jump in with nothing
like
and try to do
it's gonna
that,
be pretty. Might be
yeah,
interesting.
right, right. So your all of your extended advanced skill comes from the a deeper and deeper mastery of the
Mm,
fundamentals.
mm,
I going back to my unusual diverse patchwork. I This last semester from January to May, I was a visiting professor of clarinet at Northern Illinois University. I happened to know the professor, and he was on sabbatical, so they invited me to teach there. And it was one of the hardest things to get that clarinet studio to understand is like, I get it. You have all this complicated repertoire you have to learn for your ensembles. You got to learn solo music, but the thing that's going to help you the most and the thing that you need to spend the most time on is going back in the practice room with that simple metronome and all your scales and just
mm.
going over that until it becomes uh, just an ingrained habit that you absolutely can't get wrong.
Okay,
Like people want people want to skip ahead and do the cool stuff. I think in nearly any field you want to jump
I
ahead and
think
be
you're
the cool
right.
guy,
Yeah.
but you have to like I mean uh, the most profound masters I've ever met for music, for martial arts, for any of that stuff. It always tracks back to their foundational practice, all their fundamentals.
Mm,
The Yeah, I've had the privilege of playing under some world class musicians, and you hear their daily routine, and it's mind numbing. Like, okay, I'm gonna play a single note for like 30 seconds, and just
mm,
hold these notes. Um, my for Bagwajang, our core practice is circle walking, and that's the bulk of the practice. Is you would spend hours a day, if I were practicing as much as as I'm supposed to. You spend hours a day just walking in a circle and occasionally changing direction.
wow.
But what's embedded in that practice is physical development, awareness of your surroundings. Each change becomes a way to like a martial interaction,
Mm,
but it's the mastery comes from these core practices. Like people don't jump in. I mean, you talk to a karate person, what's their core what's their core movement? It's that straight punch.
the
And they'll
chamber.
right. And they'll practice that punch
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of times. Our Jeet Kune Do instructor Roger at our school, um, he would do even now, but as he was developing his training, they do their they're
Vertical fit, yes, the
yeah,
vertical fit, yeah.
vertical fit there, and you're doing thousands and thousands and
Mhm.
thousands of these punches, but that's you feel him punch you once, and it's like you're getting hit with a battering ram
Yeah.
because so much of the mechanic has been embedded in your
Oh, they're trying to short battle punch. Yeah, yeah, straight blast.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and so even in FMA, to me, that's the same example. Like
Mm,
you see some of the best people in the world, like they have a decisive angle one and maybe angle two, right? But it's at the right time. They're in exactly the right place at
yeah.
exactly a specific target, and it's like magic. All the rest of the stuff, like I've seen a lot of masters demonstrations, all the stuff afterwards where you get disarmed and maybe thrown around a bit, like that's after the initial encounter. Like you're already in the perfect place, and the
Yeah.
rest is kind of bonus, right? But that's how I view it. It's like your level of mastery always hinges on um like advanced mastery always hinges on your mastery of the most fundamental things in whatever you're doing. You know, where does a good beer start? It's quality water, quality ingredients,
Yeah.
good food, same
Same
thing.
thing. Good ingredients, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so a deep core focus on the quality of your ingredients. Like that's where I tend to put most of my focus now is that. Um, so yeah, at risk of narrating what's going to be a future book, like that's kind of the
I think you
introduction.
should. I think that's so interesting, though, the way you are articulating it, as far as the mastery of the basics before you master anything else, and all the all-time greats, regardless of what it is, sport figures, music, icons, actors. I mean, they just perfected their craft just over and over. I mean, and I know we tend to, not everybody, there's some people that still do diligent work and hard work, but the easy way out sometimes is more appealing. I'll just
Yeah,
get by. You know what I mean? I'll just,
right. Yeah,
you know,
I notice it now more than ever
mm,
in a lot of things. People want that quick road to success,
mm,
but it's not always equivalent to deep mastery. I mean,
no,
you
definitely
and
not. I mean, look at just
I
everything, the way things are made today. It just goes across the board. You know what I mean? It's,
right, right.
things are just not made the way they were, and just, things are not done. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't know if it's going to get
there's
better.
very few people out there making heirlooms of anything anymore. Right?
Yeah,
It's always it's the quick turnaround
the quick
stuff that's
buck. Look at music today. It's not an album. It's not CD. It's a download track. You know what I mean?
right.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
the immediate gratification,
Yeah.
and in order to find the real like I don't know masters, but like um, artists of more depth and like to me the more interesting ones you have to kind of dig, right?
Mm,
They don't always put themselves out there, or they're less focused on their marketing and more focused on creating good art,
yeah.
but they're harder to find.
Hard to
um,
find, and like because their stuff might sell, they're overlooked too. You know what I mean? But
mhm,
the real gems, I agree with you, are sometimes are unknown, or not widely known.
right.
So
I mean,
how has it helped your progression? So with relation to what we're talking about, how has it helped your progression with respects to teaching?
you mean music
Yeah,
or
yeah, correct.
yeah. um well, I think the part of it is kind of the way you observe things. Like for me, like let's say you have a sheet of music and you're reading, you don't want to just read note by note, like that goes too slowly and then you get surprised by what happens next. I think part of it is the broader learning to look more broadly and see
Mm,
what's ahead and start making your predictions, your expectations from there. That's literally like from reading from music to that. But um the establishing habits good habits thing is a big deal to me now. Like for clarinet, um so one of my, I guess, my grand teacher for clarinet, he's now passed, but Calvin Opperman, he had a reputation for decades while he was active of being like very, very particular, and a lot of people found him abrasive because he was just very blunt, like, oh, that doesn't sound good. I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know what your policy on cursing is, but he had a military background, so his disapproval was more colorful,
Yeah.
usually. But
Yeah.
he was very straightforward. Like, look, that's not working. It doesn't sound good. You should do this. I mean, the other side of it was he tended to be like, you do things his way, or it's a highway. But
Yeah.
that perspective, um, has shaped how I teach people now. Like, I try not to be as abrasive,
Yeah.
but I try to be very straightforward. Like, you know, uh, the let's say just a basic strike. Like, okay, do you really want your hand that way? Like, if, try this and hit and see what's different. And I try to
Mm.
tease the thought out of people. Like, why would you want things this way? What's the consequence of doing things this way? I've had people. One of my students, he's a younger adult, recent, or like he's almost through college. He likes to play with reverse grip for stick,
Okay.
and it's like, okay, that's kind of cool, but like, what advantages are you enjoying? What disadvantages do you notice? So it's kind of that, looking broadly and then analyzing like really what's, because I don't want to tell somebody like, don't do that. That's stupid.
Yeah, because maybe you're stunting their growth or their exploration or their
Yeah,
individuality. Yeah.
right. But it's that critical thought, I think.
Mm.
Like for Cal, for clarinet, he did a lot of critical thinking for you because he wanted to cut right to the chase. Like,
Mm.
if you're training with me, you're planning to be a music professional working in actively in New York, which takes a very high level of capability to do that. Um, so he was more akin to like military training. Like, you're going into a battlefield, here's what you have to do, or somebody's going to kill you.
Right. Or you're
Like,
done.
right. Like for me, I take that approach of, I try to take that approach of honesty and observation and thought, but scale it back for the environment that people are in.
Or the individuality, not stunting it maybe necessarily. Right. Okay.
Right. I don't know if that's making sense to
No,
people, but
it absolutely does make sense. Yeah. I mean, totally. I mean, to
um,
me anyhow, it definitely makes sense. Yeah.
I mean,
Uh,
there's one other idea that's important, and it directs, it kind of directly relates to music performance for me, is efficiency of movement.
mm,
I've seen a lot of people, like for clarinet, for instance, you set you're setting the instrument here, and then you're doing this with your hands constantly. I've seen people who are so inefficient that they've given themselves carpal tunnel or some kind of degenerative disease
oh
in
no.
their tissue because they're clawing at the instrument instead of working with the instrument.
Okay.
So, and I feel the same way with martial movement. Like, there's optimal ways of performing things, and then there's ways that um, eventually cause more harm than benefit.
Mm,
This is why you go, like, if you want to learn weightlifting, you go see a coach, because if you just like, okay, weight has to come off the ground, and you do anything,
yeah. Now
you
you're
know,
back.
right? Yeah, you break your back, literally break your back,
Or
or pull
number
something
three
out.
and four disc or freaking.
Right. I that happened to so Ronnie Coleman. He was a Mr. Olympia
Mm,
some years ago, and he went too hard. He literally smushed two discs out like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and now he's walking around with two canes. Former Mr.
think about
Olympia.
that. And now, you know what I mean? Ugh.
Yeah. So you can achieve a lot at a very high skill level,
Mm,
but if you're not doing it progressively in a way that's healthy and efficient,
no.
you're going to cause harm. Like, I've seen it in music. I've seen some of my violin colleagues, like the bow arm, or because you have to twist your arm a little bit to hold the violin up.
Mm.
Like you get these repetitive stress issues if you're not optimizing your technique. And then there's a whole separate recovery market now for specifically for musicians who need to repair their bodies because of their
I would never.
practice.
It's funny. I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, you think of especially people who are really active. They're touring all
Mm.
over the world, playing concerts. Like even if you have real optimal technique, like overuse starts to become an issue. So
I
you
would
have to look
never
after
guessed
your
that.
recovery. Um, that's become real important to me because I'm not getting any younger either. I gave
Yeah,
myself
like
this
right.
elbow, and it's still every once in a while it flares up. It's like
Mm.
you have to account for that. As much fun as you might be having, like we have a
Yeah.
lot of fun in our classes, but you got to pay attention to your body.
Yeah, right. If your body's starting to just for yeah, jeez, man. So wow, this great stuff. What are future goals for yourself, system? I mean, you already alluded to maybe another book, but what's
Yeah.
future goals?
Um. Well, in general, I would like um. Well, I would like more success with the school we have. We're gradually growing,
Hmm.
evolving. Um, it's a continuous path of providing value. Um, more books. Like I said, I already have some outlined out. I'm working on. I'm going to say this publicly, so it helps with my accountability. So maybe we get
Sure.
it done. But my friend Corey and I are starting to work on a comic book series,
Oh,
an
awesome. Okay.
instructional comics. I don't know how edutainment. I don't know if people still use that term. I just thought it would be a fun way to try to teach people stuff that might be more accessible for even a younger audience.
Through
Um,
comics. Yeah, I think that's a great
you
idea.
know, he and I are both um, entertainment nerds. Anime, comics, all that kind of stuff. Actually, a
Yeah.
lot of us at my school too. We're nerds that way. Once we move into our next location, I got a lot of comic book art to hang up. You know, expertly drawn, gritty, realistic Ninja Turtles and things like that.
I think that's
Um,
great. Yeah.
but I want to be open and creative and kind of read the omens of where things are going. I was recently involved in a martial arts like a streaming show pilot. I don't know where
Hmm.
it's going. I can probably if anyone's interested, it's Legendary Masters Council.
Legendary Master
It's in post production right now. Technically, I have an IMDb credit, which is weird. It's another credential I didn't expect to make. But I'm not sure what's going to happen with the show. Hopefully it picks up attention and we get to do more episodes.
Yeah.
Uh, but regardless, I met a lot of good people, and I'm expecting to do more like film related stuff. You know, maybe teach people a little bit about like fighting on camera. Some I'm still figuring it out, but I want to bring to bear the value of the network I've been able to grow and share their value with people as well. You know,
Oh, I think
um,
that's awesome. Yeah.
so we'll see. And then at some point, I think it'd be cool to own one of those Japanese robot toilets. The uh, if I can be successful enough to buy a robot toilet from Japan,
Then
that's
you
going to
will.
be a big
That'll be a
a,
win. You
yeah.
know, there's my goal. Jeez. What about I always like to ask this question to some folks before we wrap up. Like, what changes would you like to see in our community, or what do you think we could do better as a whole, collectively?
Oh well, I mean, this goes along with my whole kind of teaching mission. Is
Mm.
I don't want to lose any depth, but I want to see more accessibility. Like I feel like just by the nature of Filipino martial arts, we tend to draw like a more focused crowd. Is we
Mm.
were thinking about the weapons, we're thinking about a certain level of force, but there's there's a physical, mental, and cultural benefit to the arts as a whole, and I feel like if we can if we can open up and be more accessible, I think we can get more people to appreciate and participate in those arts. I mean, not everyone, like I said, not everyone's going to turn into Killer Commando, but
Mm.
it would be nice if people saw Filipino martial arts similar to how they see the accessibility of like their local karate or taekwondo school. Like it's not something shrouded in mystery or like too deadly for certain
Yeah, the whole too deadly. Oh.
like yeah, I mean, if you want to be honest with things, like a simple not even a skilled punch, but just a simple like drunken punch could result in somebody's death.
Yeah, it's
You know?
throat.
Right. Yeah. So like if we're I don't know, that's another rabbit trail. I would like more of the community to think more broadly about how accessible they are and their how they're presenting their material. This
Mm.
is part of why I wrote the book, actually, is like if people feel like they're kind of stuck in a certain mode with a certain audience and they want to broaden their audience, like here's at least my example of how I've been doing that.
Yeah.
Maybe that gives people ideas, and hopefully we get, because I would love to go to a Filipino martial arts gathering, and instead of seeing like grizzled people with rattan welts all over their arms and face, like I'd like to see families show up enjoying like the
The whole
whole
cultural
human experience.
food, what, the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I envision, and that's I think the direction I'm gonna go with my own
I think it's
efforts.
great. Yeah, I think it's. I think I think we're getting closer.
Yeah, and I think there's no better time than now, because look at things like the rise of certainly around here. Like I've started seeing a lot of mainstreaming of other aspects of Filipino culture, the food in particular. Like I said, I like to eat, but like the entertainment, certain
Mm.
like we're seeing more representation in popular media now. Like I feel like now is the time if we want to expand. Like people are already going to their local mall to get mall version of halo halo or
Yeah.
Filipino barbecue. Like it's becoming more part of the broader culture here. So I think now is a good time to, if we want to make a broad
Mm.
audience, to start applying that.
I
um,
agree. I think it's only good. I think it's going to grow. I just think it took longer than we thought, but I think there's going to be a continuous growth. I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing how things evolve. I mean, I'm going to do my part, and everyone
That's
everyone
what I
else
think.
is free to join me. But
Yeah, we all do our part. That's just it. I mean, whether you're coming from a social media aspect, whether you're coming from the teaching aspect, the cult, whatever. But if we all the pieces, I think are going to start to come into play. You know. So
yeah, it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
yeah,
So
yeah. But this has been great. I appreciate you coming on. This
yeah,
is I'm going to really trump this one up. I just think some of the things you spoke on, people need to hear. Just that whole, the play aspect, the music aspect.
yeah.
So hopefully it
No,
does. Uh,
I appreciate you having me on. I
yeah,
know we've been working to get it scheduled, but
yeah,
it's good to be here doing it, and I'm glad to be. To me, this is already part of being the bigger community. So we'll
yeah,
we'll see where it goes, but I appreciate getting the opportunity.
yeah.
So
I mean, matter of fact, I would like to have you back on. I'm starting to do episodes. They're gonna be based on people I've already been on, because then I don't have to cover their bios. I can just dove right into, but it's gonna be more show and tell. So in other words, you get a student, it'll be like 45-minute sessions, and basically you just with a partner, You just show your system, show what you do. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? It doesn't mean you have to go out there and kill it one another, but just like show the essence and the methodology of your system. So those who've been on before, if they want to come back on and do that, that we're gonna start doing that. So
Yeah, sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, and all that. So, but in the meantime, I'll be in touch with you. But I appreciate you coming on, and uh, good luck to everything, and take care of yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks again for having me.
All right, Maestro Frank, you take care.
You too.
All right, bye bye. All right, folks, that wraps up. Also, this book, Amazon. Okay, get it. Bunch of pictures, everything, and he talks about other things. So I really enjoyed this episode. I thought he touched on a lot of great stuff. So who is next? I think I'm getting an Irish stick fighter that's a different system than Bernard Letty, the Doyle system. And then after that, Demo and Capitan KI. So yeah, so those are coming up next, and then July's list we just put out. Also, raffle for again that was kind of brought up here that Jesse Santiago, all his FMA Pulse. Unfortunately, all his equipment was stolen. So we're trying to do a raffle, generate some money so he can start buying some of his equipment back. And so check that out. All these are going to be pinned on FMA discussion. All right, folks. Thank you for those who tuned in, watched, commented, and we'll see you next time.